Welcome back to another episode of Chopping It Up with ... And this week, our guest is the lovely and talented Wesley Hawthorne Harrison Linden III, the Duke of Chigney. Although some of you all may know him as Wes Linden. Welcome to the show.
It's lovely to be here. And I love all these names I've got. I do actually have two middle names in real life, but they're not the ones you always credit me with.
Well, for people watching, you're the only person I know who talks about their mum. And so if someone talks about their mum, they have to be named Wesley, not Wes. And they have to have like a proper British sounding title.
yeah, that'll do. I'll take that.
And I see by that neon light behind you, you're probably coming in live from a bottle club at some amazing London nightclub.
I am in London, but in my apartment.
So speaking of London, I thought that would be a good way to start, because I remember I was eating lunch or having a coffee with Tom Big Al Schreider somewhere at some event, and we got to talking about the UK and opening it up for our respective companies. And he said, "Oh my God, it's the worst market in the world." I went and I had this event there, and we were supposed to start at 7 o'clock, and everybody got there at 5 o'clock, and they went to the bar and they all drank for 2 hours. And then we, started the meeting at 7 and everybody was drunk. And I didn't have that experience when I opened up the UK the first time or the second time. But I did find it was kind of a difficult or different market, particularly for us guys from the US. What's as a guy who lives, grown up, born there, everything, what's your take or your advice on how somebody should build in the UK? And is there anything that you do different there that you think they don't do other places?
Well, obviously, I've only been involved with one company, and it has only ever been in the UK. Although I live in London, of all the cities in the UK where I have a team, London is probably the smallest. Because, if you think about London, we've got a population of 11 million, 12 million people, but a lot of those people are working in the city. They are living in or renting exceptionally expensive properties, or they're tourists or whatever else. It's such a transient place. I wouldn't be looking in London at all. I mean, I got asked by a company a little while ago who's based out in Europe, and they're trying to launch in the UK, and all they're doing is meetings in London. And I'm like, well, unless you only want to get people from out of the UK, as in Europeans that are working in London, you're never going to build there. Because, not saying that people who are mega wealthy will not join our type of business, but it wouldn't necessarily be the first audience you would aim at. And to live in London in a nice flat or apartment is normally £1 million upwards or more. The closer the center you get, the more it becomes 4 million, 5 million.
Yeah.
That's not going to be our target market. But around the UK, if I look around the UK in Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Edinburgh, Cardiff, we're people, smashing it. So there are some big cities, but they're not as transient. It's where people are born and bred and grow up, and the cost of living is lower, and the drive to build a better life is there.
I see this dynamic here with like New York and LA. And everybody builds in their confirmation bias excuse, right? If you live in a small town, you say, oh, if I lived in London, it would be so much easier to build. If you live in New York City, you say, oh, if I was in Iowa or Nebraska, where everybody knows everybody and everybody leaves the door unlocked and everybody meets every week at the church or the bingo hall or the Elks Club or the whatever. And the truth is, neither one is true. You can build anywhere, but there is differences. When I first opened New York City, I was in my every other market I'm building, we would rent a hotel room on Tuesday night at 7:30. And we might pay $150 for 90-minute, 2-hour hotel room rental. There were some expensive hotels. They were like $300. And then we opened New York City and I started shopping around at hotels, and the lowest bid was $1,500 for a 2-hour meeting. And the parking at the hotel would have been $80 or $100. I mean, it was just cray-cray. And I remember I think where we ended up doing meetings was Werner Erhard had a building there, I think in Manhattan, if I remember. And he was doing not EST, but the thing after EST, that program that he did, trying to think of the name of it. So he had that. But anyway, he had a building with like 2-3 stories of offices. And so we rented the 3rd floor for our meetings. The problem was he had his seminars on the 2nd floor. So my people had to go up and down past his people, and his people kept always trying to steal my people because the way, he's not a multi-level company, but if you got 5 of your friends to sign up for the seminar, you got your next seminar free.
Yeah.
So these people were just fierce recruiters, and man, anybody who came within a mile of them, it's, so yeah, there's some, it's just different dynamics. If you're building in Iowa and a farm town, those people get up at 4 a.m. to work the farm. Yeah. So you trying to do a meeting at 8 o'clock at night, they're going to bed at 8 o'clock at night. Yeah. Yeah. You come to Miami and you do your meeting at 8 o'clock, and that works great because people have dinner at 10 or 11 p.m. after your meeting, and they're in the club till 2 a.m. They go take a nap till 6 a.m. and then they go to work.
When a few years ago, I used to run a monthly opportunity presentation in central London, 2 minutes from Victoria Station, really nice hotel. And they used to charge £350 for the evening. And it was packed. I mean, I could, the capacity was 200. I was squeezing 300 in, and it was the atmosphere was electric. It felt to me like a mini event once a month, and it was just a 40-minute opportunity presentation. And then, as Big Al said, people hung out in the bar afterwards. But none of those people would drive, because nobody can afford to drive in London. I mean, you have to pay a congestion charge and parking and everything. So everybody came on the train. So nobody lived in London either. They were either people that worked in London but commuted home on the train for 60 or 90 minutes afterwards, or there were people that thought, let's go to Wes's meeting in London so we can have a day and a night out, and they come from 200 miles away. Yeah. But nobody was based in London. Our customer base in London was tiny. But that hotel, all of a sudden I got this notification that they were putting their price up from $350, I think it was, a month, to £1,250 for an evening session. And then, so obviously we didn't do that. We moved to another hotel near Covent Garden. But like you say, the problem with that hotel was that all the other network marketing, direct selling companies had found that hotel too. It was the only one that was pitching for their business. for £200 a night or something. So we'd be doing a meeting, and next door was Herbalife, and down the corridor was Forever Living, and it was just carnage. But then, as it happened, after we had the very sad London bombings on our tube system, on our underground system, and we cancelled the next month because it just didn't seem to be any, like London was. But months after that, we went from getting 300 people to 25.
Yeah.
Like, people did not want to come. Like, that treat of going to London, gone. People didn't want to do it anymore. If they had to work in town, they just wanted to get home. And so we stopped doing them in central London.
People have to adapt. You get so creative. Like, I've found all kind of other amazing spaces to do meetings. There are public libraries that have amazing meeting rooms. There are museums that have amazing meeting rooms, country clubs, different things. And you have to get creative. Like, in a city like London, the key thing you said, I think, was close to the tube station, or what we call the subway here.
Yeah.
There are cities, that's it. If it's not on the tram route, the trolley route, the subway route, whatever, like New York, no, even if you're a multi-millionaire, you don't have a car in New York City.
Yeah.
Where would you go with it? How would you get anywhere? It's impossible to drive to park virtually anywhere, right? It's, so you have to think of that stuff, and then you get creative. Like, okay, how do we invest in a sound system for the market? How do we invest in a screen? Okay, I can go on Amazon and pay $150 and buy a projection screen, or I can get charged $200 every Tuesday night by the hotel to use the screen that's mounted on the wall, whether I use it or not, but they're going to charge me $200 every week if I use it. Yeah. Right? You got to get creative with that stuff. But so that leads me to another question. Where are you at now with your team in terms of live meetings versus online meetings?
Well, that actually, following on from what you say, that kind of links with the creative thing, because before the pandemic, meetings were kind of, for us in the UK, meetings anywhere, not just London, were starting to die. Where in, I don't know, Norwich or Southampton, or, these kind of little university towns where we used to get 150 or 120 people a night for a meeting, we were down to 30 or 20, and that wasn't because of any disasters. It was just because it seemed to be people didn't want to drive to a Crown Plaza or a Holiday Inn and sit with a bunch of strange people in a suit. That just seemed to. So one of the things I started to do with my team around 2018, 2019, is we were finding places on Airbnb, those kind of unique spaces. So you could sleep there, but they would be like old churches that had been renovated. So there was lovely bedroom, but they had these huge like spaces, and it would be like inviting people to your home, and you'd rent it for a couple of nights, and you do a couple of nights worth of meetings or do some afternoon trainings and all this other stuff. Or you'd find these nice big houses that had these huge open plan kitchens and the great big bifold doors that go into the garden and stuff. And we were doing things like that. And if you pick the right time, like not the weekend, you could get like £120 a night or for the whole day, basically. And you could sleep there and do the same thing the next day. But then the pandemic hit. And of course, A, you couldn't do that. But B, because travel abroad became much harder for people, and people have, even now in the cost of living crisis that we're experiencing, people don't want to fly, aren't flying so much. You cannot get these places anymore, or if you can, the price is like double or triple. So that scuppered that a bit. I'm hoping things will balance itself out a bit when energy prices sort a little bit more and whatever. But yeah, I mean, but that was a good example of, and that wasn't my idea. It was a kind of someone in the team was just like, hey, listen, we've got this Airbnb that's a bit like a church. And we just started looking around the UK for these kind of places. It was brilliant. And yes, you weren't getting 150 people, but you were getting like a nice intimate 15, 20, 25 people. And, you know, not necessarily not going to town with an incredible buffet, but having a few snacks and a glass of wine or something afterwards. And people felt connected. Since I say the last 12 months, there's definitely an eagerness to get back in the room for people. So we don't do opportunity presentations anymore. We call them, in our company, we call them buzzes. Okay, I don't know if that word translates in the UK, but you know, buzz is like a good word, like an activity. It's like, you know, high energy. And in those meetings, they're incredibly popular because people know there's going to be a shorter opportunity meeting, maybe only 15, 20 minutes, little break, and then training, recognition. And we're giving lots of people that are in their earlier stages a chance to get up and do a 5-minute presentation or be on a little panel for, you know, 10 minutes or something. So it's helping us blood new talent as well. They're becoming very popular. But much to my dismay, and I had to, you know, I kind of learned from you when you kind of remind us, like, we can't always stay in the same thinking. I was fully subscribed to the idea that if you have an opportunity presentation online, it has to be at a certain time because you've got to drive demand for it and whatever. And we were doing that, and it was like 8 o'clock every evening, and then we expanded it to 6 o'clock and 8 o'clock, and then to midday, and blah, blah, blah. And now it's just basically runs 24/7. And I wasn't a fan. I fought this, but actually our recruitment is better than it's ever been. So I have to concede, okay, people have changed maybe sometime. Like, people are like, I want to do things when I want to do it. I want to do it on demand, not when you tell me I have to do it. So that's allowed me to change my thinking a little bit, and has been very popular. But one other thing I've noticed with big events, like the big, you know, we do events, and we'll do a Saturday all day and a Sunday all day, but the Sunday will be identical to the Saturday. So you only need to come one day. And we used to be like 55% of the people would come on the Saturday, 45% of the people would come on the Sunday. Now, 85% of the people come on the Saturday, 15, like the numbers, it's completely skewed post-pandemic. And I don't have the answer. This will probably be my own confirmation bias, but is it that thing about people's kind of quality of life? They want to be at home with their family on the Sunday, or they want to go and visit people, or they want to get ready for the kids' school. And I don't know, but we haven't cracked it yet. We're going to kind of survey people at the next event we're coming up next month, and try and find out, why did you pick Saturday and not Sunday? Or why did you pick Sunday and not Saturday? Because it's completely skewed.
I think you touched on something really big there, that quality of life issue, and how much that dynamic has changed post-COVID lockdowns, death spirals, you know, vaccine hysteria, whatever. Because that's what, you know, it's really paralleled my recruiting in terms of how I've gone over the years. From I was the guy with the picture with my 5, you know, exotic sports cars, and you know, my $80,000 watches, and my $10,000 bespoke suits, and $15,000 shoes, and blah blah blah. And now it's about, hey, let's get you out of debt.
Yeah.
Hey, let's get you some more quality time. And it's really been a steady, incremental transformation, I would say, since the 80s. When the 80s, the bling bling was king in terms of recruiting. Yeah. Those of us in the space then, and I was a big player in that space, the bling bling was king. And now it's just the exact opposite. Part of it is the demographics of the population, right? Now the millennial generations are starting to outnumber the boomer generation, whereas in the 80s, the boomer generation was driving the bus in every aspect of social culture and purchasing decisions and work and career decisions. So now that dynamic has changed. I like to believe we've got more enlightened as a society.
Yeah.
I'd like to believe I got more enlightened as a person. For me, taking that 2-year sabbatical where I just sold everything and said, hey, I don't own these things anymore. These things own me.
Yeah.
It's too much. I don't want, I was known as the Viper guy, right? Because I had 9 Vipers or 10 Vipers. And so I was the Viper guy. And I was like, and that was fun and cool. And I, built on that in my presentations. I had, signature stories about driving my Viper and coming across to other people. And, and I just, one day I was like, I don't want to be the Viper guy.
Yeah.
It's, when I'm said and gone and they've got my tombstone, I don't want it to say, here lies the Viper guy.
Yeah.
Right. When I die, I want my tombstone to say, here lies Randy Gage. He never sold a sketchy NFT or a shit coin to anybody.
There you go. You're well on track for that then. That's good.
But seriously, I just, you get older. I've had death scares in my life. I've had those life transforming experiences where you realize, hey, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. It is, and now I'm at the, I'm old enough now that, funerals are just a regular part of my calendar now.
Yeah. It's
just, just, there's many, I know I've just, God, I was doing something on my phone. I was trying to clean up some files or something. And then, I was going through the contacts and my friend Gail Carson came up, who had died like 5 months before. And I'm like, geez, so I started looking through the contacts and I think I had like 9 or 10 or 11 contacts in my phone who were friends that had died. Yeah. And so you really do rethink your life. And I think it's been so good for the profession. I mean, still, I forget who I was. Oh, I think it was the chopping it up I did with Art Jonak when I was relaying the story. I was working with the video editor for a client company producing a video, and there was like 5-6 clips of money in there, just stacks of cash. And they had the one with the guy like flipping off the $100 bills. And I'm like, no. That's a trope. I know you have a bunch of MLM companies who probably love that shit in their demo videos, their recruiting videos, but I don't want that in my clients' videos. That's not the market we're going after. Yeah. And we still have our share of dinosaurs, right? Who that's still how they're trying to recruit. But I think that's why they're dinosaurs and why they don't have the growth in their organizations. And it's why some of those legacy companies, you get hired to do speeches. I get hired to do speeches. You go in and, I'm going to be 64 years old in a month. And I go to some of these conventions and I say, am I the youngest person in the room here? Yeah. Well, what's going on here? And because they're still recruiting like it's Gordon Gekko 80s. Yeah.
I'm not trying to say that I am a visionary that was ahead of this curve or anything else like this, but personally, for a number of years, having grown up in a company, 25 years in, and obviously when you grow up in a company, I guess when a company starts, they have their fair share of those dinosaurs who have jumped from one company to the other, and they're going to be with you for a few days, few weeks, few months, then they're going to move on. So I grew up in my company at a time where I had zero significance in my company because I was just starting out, seeing all these.
How old was the company when you started?
6 months. It was
okay, so really early on.
Yeah. So, but I'm in the very early stages. I'm 20 years old, and there's all these people 2 or 3 or 4 times my age who are all talking about the bling, and that's it. And 99.9% of them disappeared 3 weeks later to the next shiny object. But I was like, I can't talk to them. Like, I'm not talking to my friends about this. Like, they're going to be really unimpressed. So as my kind of journey went on and my voice got louder within the organization, I was always kind of like, maybe we should talk a bit more about the difference that an extra 200 or 300 or 500 pounds or 750 pounds a month would make, and I did have to fight quite hard with people, and I don't want to be disrespectful to those people because some of them have been incredibly successful, but like, to try and to represent the newer breed that's saying, I'm not sure people are going to be so impressed by the Lambo in front of the hotel door as they were 20 years ago. Like, maybe their parents were impressed by that, and now I'm pleased to say the last few years, that's very much how our company is operating. And to be fair to some of those people that didn't see it then, they seem to get it a bit better now. But, I was thinking, when you're talking about the suits and how you've changed your style, I was thinking the other day, someone said to me, have you still got all your rental properties? And I was like, yeah, I have a few of them, and 10, 15 years ago, when I started making money and I started to build a property portfolio, that was a really aspirational thing for people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe those people in their 50s, 60s who are thinking about another alternative pension. Everyone was buying or wanted to buy a second property or third or fourth property and have a passive income stream as well. So that was part of my story, that because of this business, I've been able to start to build a property portfolio, and I've got property in London, and I've got another one in West London, I've got this. And I would talk about that. And the last, 3, 4, 5 years, I don't talk about that at all, to the point to which people think I don't have it anymore. Because actually the attitudes now to landlords or people who are in theory hoarding properties is really bad. Like, people, we're probably heading towards a Labour government. We're a lot more, there's a bit more, I don't mean we're going to be completely a socialist state, but, there's that thinking more about people rather than things. And the idea of being one of those people that hoards property, that stops other people getting onto the property ladder, that charges extortionate rent, and you are the enemy now. So I don't want to talk about it at all. But if you'd have told me that 10 years ago, you just would not have believed that. But you've got to move with it, haven't you?
That's the thing I'm always talking about really on my Power Prosperity podcast, is the wealth shaming that goes on in our society today.
Yeah.
Now, part of it is the cultural thing, because there's, I mean, the way the generations change. I was doing once a year, I do a platform skills laboratory. 2-day event. People all over the world come, professional speakers, CEOs, HR directors, a lot of direct selling people who want to be better on the stage, people who have to learn how to give speeches and make compelling presentations. So I was explaining how I repaint stories. How, part of the lab is we take someone's story and then we craft it and mold it, and you shape the story. And so you get, like a professional speaker, they usually have a signature story. If, for Les Brown, it's his story of his growing up with his mom and his brother, and he was labeled educably mentally retarded or something, and his mother was a maid, and she a housekeeper somewhere, and she had to clap her hands or snap her fingers every so often because the lady who she was working for wanted to make sure she wasn't stealing something. And so that's a signature story, right? And great leaders in our profession, they get their signature story. For me, I was a dishwasher in a pancake house, turning my life around, blah, blah, blah. So you shape this. And I talked about how examples of, you give examples, and then if you're doing it as long as I do, you say, well, like, let's say I'm doing a meeting and all of a sudden the guy hits the button on the board, the tech, and he gets screeching of feedback. So that would happen. Now, what do most speakers do? They pretend, well, let me pretend that didn't happen, and maybe the audience won't notice that just happened, or somebody drops you be in a banquet hall, a hotel, in the banquet hallway, someone will knock over a tray with 500 plates and they'll all break. And the speaker will just talk louder and pretend like it didn't happen. No, you got to weave that right in your story. So like this feedback would come in and I would say, that was Jimi Hendrix. Well, I did that for 10 years. Then it switched to Clapton. Then it switched to Slash. So I was telling the story how it switched to Slash. And then I've got one of the attendees, I hear her, she turns to her friend, she says, who's Slash? And I'm like, what the fuck? This woman doesn't know who Slash is? What the fuck is the world coming to? But I realized Appetite for Destruction was like 25 years ago, 30 years ago. Yeah. So I said something about Cyndi Lauper. She had no idea who Cyndi Lauper was. She knows who Olivia Rodrigo is. She knows who BTS is. She knows who Katy Perry is, but she doesn't know who Cyndi Lauper is, right? So part of it is this change in generations. And like for this lady who didn't know who Slash was, if you brought her into the business today, I think, if I remember, she's like 23 years old. She doesn't have a driver's license. Yeah. That would be heresy to my generation. The second you qualified to get a driver's license, you ran down and took the test and got the driver's license. You couldn't wait. There's so many people in the later millennial generations, they're like, why would I want a driver's license? I don't want a car. It's bad for the planet. I got my membership on my solar powered scooter, company, and I take those, and I Uber when I need, when it's raining out, I take an Uber, and I don't want to own a home. It's like, for me, I was like, I aspired to be a citizen of the world. And I said, okay, and I had my place in Miami. I had my place in Costa Rica. I had my place in San Diego. I had my place in Sydney. And to a millennial, they're like, you're destroying the planet. That's not sustainable. Everybody can't have 10 houses around the world. I don't want any houses. I'm just going to go and stay at, Vibo or Airbnb or, whatever I rent of you. And I think, so some of that is what you get as owning rental property, that you're one of the evil James Bond movie villains who's taken over, but that I think you got to fight back on, because it's such savvy financial sense to do what you're doing. And I'm like you, I take a lot of the money that I earned in this profession, I invested in real estate, and I invested in other things. And to me, that's one of the sexiest parts of our business, is when you can, because the sexiest part of our business to me is leverage, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that you no longer have to trade hours for dollars or pounds or pesos or whatever the currency is. So we get that leverage. And then if you can build up that 15,000 X a month peso, pound, well, 15,000 peso wouldn't do anything, but 15,000 pounds or $15,000 a month. And you say, yeah, and I'm going to take 3,000 of that every month and invest it in real estate or invest it in this or invest it in that. Then you're getting leverage on your leverage. Yeah. And we got to celebrate that.
But, I do agree. And don't get me wrong, it's not because I'm ashamed of being a landlord. I'm proud of what I've achieved, but there is an element to which it's not really the thing you shout about anymore. But there is also, as you say, a lot of people in that room are actually trying to sell their property now because mortgage interest rates are going so high, or they'd rather have the money and spend it now and enjoy life. Maybe that's another COVID thing or whatever. And it's, as you say, for anyone under a certain age, it's not really aspiration anymore. So I'm not going to talk to people about an aspiration that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, it's got to be their aspiration. We have to, and that's the thing we have to do as leaders, is just like that speaker has to put a new set of sails on their signature stories, we've got to do that with our presentations.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I do when I'm working with a company, is look over their, what I call the copy platform of their recruiting message. What is the themes that go through that? And it's the first thing I do when I join a company and I start creating my standardized presentation that I want to put in effect through the group. Is, okay, let's look at this. And no, you know what? That slide with the Ferrari and the bimbo on the beach and the stack of cash, that worked really good in 1989. It's probably not going to work so good in 2023, and you have to look over that stuff and say, am I being relevant to the people that I want on my team?
I'm sure you know this intuitively from what you've done for years on the platforms and stage and your books and everything else. But, that message about get out of debt and have a better lifestyle has very much landed in the UK, very much landed in my company. Our very, very top earner, my kind of mentor, sponsor, whatever, he's absolutely, he could afford to have any message he wanted about 50 Lambos a month or whatever. He is 100% stolen heard it from you and stolen the thing about get out of debt and live a great lifestyle or improve your lifestyle, whatever. That really has landed here. And that's been very impactful. So credit to you.
You know what I noticed? To me, you and Steve, I believe, really live the dream life. I never count other people's money. I try not to make assumptions, but just as long as we've been friends now, and just, we're like a lot of people today, we're WhatsApp friends more than in-person friends, part because we're on other sides of the water, and part just because that's how the world works today. But you're always in Spain or the Maldives or Paris or whatever. I mean, one of the things we sell in this business is lifestyle, because it's not just about get out of debt. Because if we just get out of debt, okay, now we're at least, that's why I joined the business the last time around, right? I had my restaurant seized by the IRS. I sold off all my furniture. I was $55,000 in debt, right? So my goal was to be broke.
Just to qualify as broke.
That was my aspirational. And by the way, if you need to go close the curtains because of I know the sun is setting in London now, and go ahead and do that. But when I would talk to people about the business, and they'd say, "Oh, I can't get in the business. I'm broke. I don't have money for the distributor kit." And I was like, "Oh my God, you're broke? You know how lucky you are?" I need to make $55,000 just to qualify to be broke, So there is this, great, let's get you out of debt, but it's also, after get out of debt, it's that quality of life. And it looks, looking at you guys from the outside, the other side of the pond, it truly does look like you're the living proof epitome of what we promise, that you really can create your dream lifestyle.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
Yeah, and I'm glad it comes across that way, but that's not it's not deliberate. It's not like a marketing ploy. That is how
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
that's how we live, and if that inspires people in our teams as well, then great. And like you rightly say, it's not the aspiration isn't just get out of debt. The aspiration is get out of debt, stay out of debt, and build the lifestyle of choice, of dreams, whatever. And for me, I'm 25 years into my journey now, and I remember going to a Randy Gage event at a hotel, a Radisson or something near Heathrow Airport 23 years ago, maybe something like that. I was like, I still had hair, and of course, in those days, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have YouTube. So I had never seen you really. I'd just heard you because we had your audio cassette tapes, and I'd read your books. And you were coming over to Heathrow and to do this thing, and you did the alarm clock sketch, the beep, 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 and it's 6 o'clock on a Monday morning, and beep, 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 beep. And then it's 6:30, and then they hit the snooze button, and then and all that. And I was sitting near the back row because I was really shy, and I didn't want to meet you because I didn't know what I would say. Because I was like, I can't talk to this person. I'm going to sit near the back. And you did that, and I was just mesmerized by that. And then you talked about becoming unimportant to the creation of your income and that leverage that you talk about. And then I think you said unimportant to the creation of your income. And then you paused. And I think you said, I love that phrase so much, I'm going to say it again. And then you said it again. And it had, like, you could have heard a pin drop, like you had everybody magnetized by that. And that really captured me. And I was like, that is the aspiration to have. So I wasn't, even then, that wasn't about Bentleys or Jaguars or cars or houses. It was about leverage, not exchanging time for money, not being in the rat race, not having to go to work in the dark and come home in the dark, and all of those kind of things, like all of those messages. I mean, I don't know how much that day was that day, £39 or £59 or £99 or 97 or whatever it was. But that's paid for itself many, lots of times over. Just those messages. And once, I sometimes feel sorry for people that join the business, get it, and then stop. And then they go back to that life, and it's like they quit. So they'd already conceded that their plan A wasn't what they wanted. So they find a plan B. Then they quit on the plan B, go back to plan A, but knowing that plan B existed. Yeah. And sitting in events like yours and read books like yours, or go to the mastermind or any of those things. And then they go back and settle. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I'm not talking down to those people. But for me, mentally, I could never see myself ever getting into the rat race at that point. It was all or nothing. I had to make this work because I was so infected by the possibilities that to not make it work, I couldn't have lived with myself. Couldn't have gone to work every day and sat in traffic hearing that alarm clock. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Wow. 20. Yeah. I remember I didn't know until you told me that we were at some mastermind event or something. And you said, do you know I'm the one who won the Simon Says game in the London event? And I had no idea. It was, and I did this at a lot of events. It was something, it was just because everyone knows the story. Simon Says. The game is when Simon says, touch your nose, you touch your nose. If I just say, touch your nose, and you touch your nose, you're out. So I don't, whatever it was, say there's 1,000 people in that event or any event. So I would start with 1,000 people and I'd say, okay, we're going to play Simon Says, everybody know the rules. You'd explain it. And then I would say, okay, Simon Says, everybody stand up. Simon Says, everybody sit down, stand up. Boom. 200 people stand up. Okay. You're out of the game forever. There's 800 people left. All right. Simon Says, touch your ear. Da, da, da. Boom. 100 people out. Da, 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 da. And you ended up being the winner, which is a good testament to your thinking skills and your mindset, because the whole goal of that game is to show people how easily we are programmed, how easily how easy it is to fall into the behavior and the habit of being herded like sheep.
Yeah.
Being told what to do and just doing it. And people, I really should start doing it at events again. I haven't done it for years and years. I really should start doing it again, because it's such a graph, and you guys watching, you all go steal it, do it at your events. You just be amazed at how easily, just how people get led around. And it's just instinctive, because it starts when you're 6 months old, 1 month old, 2 month old. Stop, don't touch that, don't do that. You've got billions of these impressions of being told what to do by parents, aunt, uncle, school teachers, guidance counselors, security guards, government people, blah, 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 blah. And we got to break out of that mindset. We got to, people who just watch us for the first time, haven't seen the series, probably figured out it's not an interview. It's just, I just pick cool, brilliant people and I have a conversation with them, and I let the podcast people or the YouTube people eavesdrop, and we each bring like a couple of points we want to talk to the other about. What do you have on your list? Things you got that you want to talk about?
Well, I think one of those things, one thing I remember you saying at that event, and this was one of the things out on my list, was that you said, I think you said, he who holds the pen earns the most money.
The clicker. It was the marker. At that point, we were using whiteboards. It was like the marker.
Yeah. He who holds the marker pen earns the most money. And I don't think you meant, everyone has to be a professional speaker. I think you meant you need to lead your team. You need to be on the stage, showing people how to draw the plan and how inspiring people, whatever. And again, that was poignant for me, because I chose to sit in the second from back row because I didn't want to be anywhere near the front, because I didn't want to get picked on, and I didn't want to have to talk to you because I was intimidated, and I, had imposter syndrome and all those other things. But that, again, was a lesson that stayed with me. Question for you was, you went from having your armed robbery, that we, you talk about your failed businesses and stuff like that. At what point in your journey did you realize that you needed to be someone who was the guy at the front of the room, helping your team develop and inspiring them, rather than just being the follower?
Where it happened was it was probably 6 years into the business, because 5 years into the business is when I had my epiphany about duplication. Because for the first 5 years, I was just going to all those meetings, buying all those products, attending all the major events, and losing money. and never getting duplication. And so after 5 years of this bitter frustration, I had this come to Jesus meeting with myself and said, okay, come on, let's stop all the hype and the rah-rah and traveling the beaches of the world and driving the Lambos and everything. What is going on here? Because you're doing this 5 years. I was working in the restaurant business, so I was already working 70 to 80 hours a week, sometimes more. And I was doing this on top of those restaurant hours, and it was brutal. And so, I would, I'd be driving home, trying to stay awake, roll down the windows in the car so I don't fall asleep. It's 1 a.m. I get home, and then I'm getting up, the alarm clock the next morning, right? And going to work, and then rushing home and taking a shower and throwing on a suit and tie and going out to do a show the plan at somebody's house that night. And I realized, okay, either this is all bullshit and it doesn't really work, or the problem isn't network marketing. The problem is me and the way I'm doing it. And that was my epiphany, right? So I realized, okay, there really are people making money I had been through a bunch of companies in those first 5 years, and there were successful people in all of them. And they really were winning bonus cars and going on cruises and cashing $50,000 a month bonus checks. And so I realized, okay, I have got to learn how to duplicate, how to sponsor more people. And so I got dressed up in my Miami Vice suit every night, and I got my marker and I started drawing on the whiteboard and showing the plan 5 nights a week. And I learned how to recruit and could put in 30 people in a month, and then 28 would drop out. And so, okay, those people were stupid, they're ignorant, they're lazy, they don't get it, they're just losers. I'll put in another 30. And again, 25, 27 drop out. And I realized, okay, it isn't just making incredible presentations. It's got to be, I've got to create duplication with this, maybe not the marker, but the platform, the stage. You get the stage. There's this immense privilege we get to be on the platform. And then there's this extraordinary responsibility that comes from being on the platform. And so if you just buy into the hype and rah-rah, you can, and there's still people doing that today, right? There are plenty of grinders in our business who sponsor 30, 40 people every month with 80, 90, 95% of them dropping out. And that's just how they play the game, and they're okay with that. And I wasn't okay with that. And because I still knew in my heart of hearts that, if 95% of the people I bring into business drop out, then what I'm saying to recruit that 100% is a lie. Because I keep saying you're going to get the cars and the palm trees and the beaches and the big checks. And I realized, okay, and it took me that from the 5th year to the 6th year to really understand, okay, this is about building out a step-by-step duplicable system, and you got to have the infrastructure that goes with it. There has to be an infrastructure.
Yeah.
There has to be some type of mass market recruiting tool to get people into the funnel. There has to be some template for presentations that everybody on every level will get in, will be able to replicate. There has to be a third-party tool. So then I realized, okay, I can make a presentation, record a presentation, and have it on demand for my people. But I need my sponsor to record a presentation and have it on demand so I can show it. Because when I show people my presentation, When I invite people to come to my opportunity meeting where I'm the guy drawing the circles, I always get the same reaction. They say, "Oh, you're incredible. What a great thing. Oh, I love the jokes you told. That story was so amazing. This is the perfect business for you." I just don't think it'll work for me.
Yeah.
And so it's like, everybody in Miami would say, "Gage, you have to do the presentation every month." And I'm like, "No, I can't do the presentation every month because I have prospects that I want to sign up. And I can't bring them to a presentation where I'm the speaker, because if I do, when I finish, they're going to say, 'That looks very interesting.'" And when you hear those words, whenever a candidate says to you, "That looks very interesting," you're screwed. It means they're not going to join, right? Nobody ever said, "That looks very interesting. Sign me up." They always say, "That looks very interesting. I'm sure it's going to work for you," right? So I think, it took me to the 6th year to nuance out the realities of, and what I've refined it to today. I used to talk about the Iroquois Indian tribe, and they would make their decisions by how it would affect the 7th generation of the village. Where I'm at today, what I'm teaching in my team and my like the MLM confidential newsletter that I'm doing with Jaime and the stuff we're spinning off from that, is you've got to make every strategic decision for your team based on the premise of how will this be done by somebody 25 levels below you who has never met you. And that is my gold standard now, that's the philosophy that I build out every tool, every strategy. How is this going to be done by Maria Elena on my 25th level who's never met me? Because, we all know you get 5, 25, 125, 625, that's how it's supposed to go. And it's supposed to go like that forever. But it never goes like that forever, right? It goes down, gets wider. And then there's this point where it starts to be inverted. Yeah. And the triangle becomes a 2 triangle, a right side up triangle and an upside down triangle, because there's a certain level at which the width stops going wider.
Yeah.
And for people who are in binary plans or plans where people are, matrix plans where people are placed in, don't think about in terms of how it is in the comp plan where they're placed, but how they're recruited, meaning you sponsor the first generation people, you sponsor 7 people. The people they sponsor, no matter where they're placed in the structure, that's your second generation of people. So maybe you have 7 first generation people, maybe you have 18 second generation people. Then you have 42 third generation people. Then you have 190 fifth generation, whatever. And what I see is the really charismatic people can build wider for 7 levels. Their cult of personality, the strength of their charisma, because they can still personally touch people on the 7th generation.
Yeah.
You can, if you're building in Chicago, Illinois, it's really easy to have people, okay, it's not easy, but I mean, a good leader, a strong leader can readily get 7th generation people there in Chicago, and they'll meet you at the monthly event and at the social things, and they'll shake your hand and they'll be able to look in your eye. The 25th level is usually people who haven't met you. They've never been able to look in your eye. They've never been able to shake your hand. They saw a video of you at on the company website, or they were in the balcony in an auditorium of 10,000 people in an arena, and you were a little speck down on the stage. So they've had exposure to you, but they never met you. So if Maria Elena on the 25th level can't do, and this isn't just recruiting, this is training, developing customers, whatever the particular action we want to happen is, that's my barometer now. That's where I've landed as of today, which is, okay, when I'm having my strategy session with my Jedi council and we're figuring out what's our team system, that's the litmus test it has to pass.
Yeah. And it's like the photocopy. Do you call it photocopy or Xerox? Yes. The photocopy of the photocopy. If you keep, eventually you can't read it anymore. And I mean, I can't say I've got a great solution for that, because that you're probably right. 7 levels seems to be about right. As you're saying it, I'm like, oh, I think that's about right. But
that's a good leader. For most people, it starts going down by the 3rd or 4th level. Mm-hmm. And for there's freak of nature people. They're the real estate agents who sponsor 20 people a month for 6 months straight. Or they get down 9 levels or maybe 10, but then it happens. And when the system becomes the star instead of you, that's when you break that threshold of the 7 levels.
Yes. And that's when you create what you talked about becoming unimportant to the creation of your income. If you're not doing every presentation and everybody can do what you can do as well as, or better, or whatever else. But for me, if I go back to something you said before about Steve and myself having what appears on the outside to be like the lifestyle, the dream lifestyle, in terms of having nice trips abroad and doing fun things and going to theatre and stuff like that. Again, this is something I debate with other leaders in my business and elsewhere, and I don't know what your take on this is, but to me, after I've been 25 years in one company, reached the top level, I am still current in my business, but I'm not the most current, obviously, because after 25 years, you're not going to be the most current necessarily. But to me, I think a newer person can look at that lifestyle that I have and go, I'd like to be doing that in 5 or 10 or 15 years' time. I think if they only saw me as a workhorse or a grinder or a grifter or whatever it was you described it as before, and I was just slamming 30 people a month in, they'd look at that and go, so I'm 37 now, and in 25 years' time, I'll be 62. I've still got to be doing that. Like, where are you on that debate?
I'm just shouting this from the rooftops to people. I've got a guy, you call his phone, you're never going to get him. And he tells people, I never take incoming calls from a team member. Right? I'm literally in a big meeting. At that point, this was when we were starting Agile. All right. So this guy is the #1 income earner in Agile. He's on a stage. We got a big crowd. I'm sitting next to my sponsor. So this guy, top guy, says, I never take incoming calls from team members. I only do outgoing calls. I'm too busy. I don't have time to take calls. This is why we have meetings and website and training and that stuff. I don't have time to take those calls. Well, as soon as he said, I don't have, I looked over at my sponsor and I saw his eyes light up like a Christmas tree. I told him, if you ever say those fucking words, I will quit that day. So don't get any ideas, right? And when you called this guy on the stage, when you called his voicemail, he would say, let me make up a name so I don't throw him under the bus. Say Jim Smith. Hi, you've reached Jim Smith. I'm totally slammed right now, so I can't take your call. But if it's important, send an email or send a text. And that was his voice for the whole time I ever knew him. And I just thought, if I was in his team, I would never want that lifestyle. Why would I aspire? Why would I want to aspire to that? And I don't think there's a lot of people who are so clueless on that. And they think they come from the corporate world. And in the corporate world, if you can convince your boss that you are just killing it, burning the midnight oil, burning the candle at both ends, 18 hours a day, maybe they're going to be impressed and give you a raise or give you a promotion. If you bring that shit to our business, I think particularly where we're at today with these later millennial generations, they'd be like, I don't want any part of that. And so I've made a real point of that. One of the things, it's like designing compensation plans. For people who don't know, I actually introduced the concept of network marketing in many countries around the world. Croatia was one of them. Slovenia was one of them. Bulgaria was one of them. What's the name of that Caribbean country? Bahamas. So I remember when I opened up network marketing in Croatia, I designed a comp plan. I was doing it for Avon, for a licensee of Avon there. They wanted to open Croatia. It was a licensee of Avon corporate, and they were like a franchise, and they wanted to open Avon in Croatia and Slovenia as a network marketing company. And they hired me to help them do that. And so I built the comp plan. And Croatia was in the middle of declaring independence. They had a civil war. So there were literally, I would go there and do an event in Zagreb, and you could go to areas of the city, and there were the United Nations peacekeeping force with the tanks separating the Serbs and the Croats. And, I would do a meeting. There would be people who live an hour away who had to drive 8 hours to get there because they had to go through Serb-controlled territory. And so I built out the comp plan, and I put in a bonus car. And my GM there of Croatia, she's like, Randy, are you crazy? You cannot put a bonus car in here. People will... If somebody in this country wins a bonus car, their neighbors are going to come and slash their tires and throw rocks through the windshield. I said, no, I believe in the power of the dream. I believe in aspiration. And I think that when people win these bonus cars, they will be inspirations to the people in their neighborhood, particularly in difficult times like this. And I maintained that the recognition is more important than the money. And so, and by the way, the first person to win the bonus car was a lady named Mrs. Zupancic, who was, I think, 65 or 68 years old. And by the way, let me detour and tell the story of how she won it. I'm doing a meeting for the very first 10 or 13 people who are going to open the country. It's in a boardroom at the office. And these are the friends of the franchise owner. And he calls some people and says, hey, I'm going to open Avon. I hired this really high-priced guru from America. He's coming in. He's going to show you how to open the country. So he gets me a room with about a dozen people in it. And she's one of the people. And I say, I throw out these stupid things that 27 years later, guys like you say. I was sitting in the room and you said, unimportant to the creation of your income. You say these things and you don't realize people are listening to what you say.
Yeah.
I say, and I had a diamond was the high rank in the company. I say, the first diamond in this company is going to be the person in this room who sends the most notes and cards to the members of their team. Handwritten notes or cards to the members of their team. So, no, it wasn't at the corporate headquarters. It had to be at a hotel, because after the meeting, about 10 minutes later, Mrs. Zupancic comes back in the meeting room, and she's holding a stack of postcards this thick. And she says, Mr. Gage, I'm going to be the first diamond in the company. And because I'm going to be the one who sends the most notes and cards to the people in my team. So I went down to the souvenir shop and I bought all of the postcards in the rack. And I need you to sign each one of them, because every time I send out a note, it's going to be from me and you. And I'm looking at this stack. She's got like a 5-inch stack of postcards. I'm like, it'd take me 2 hours to, but I was so impressed with her gumption of doing that, that I stayed there and I signed every single postcard for her. And everybody watching, by the way, don't ever ask me to do that. I will never do it again. I did it for her because she was the first. So I'm putting that out there right away before this story goes out in the universe. So she becomes the first diamond, and she becomes the first person who wins the bonus car. She's like 65 or something years old. She's never driven in her life. She doesn't even know how to drive a car. She doesn't have a driver's license. It doesn't matter. She hired a driver to drive her car around.
Amazing.
And when those people got those cars, it was what I said. The neighbors came from miles around to, oh my God, that's so amazing. This company gave you this car for free. And the other thing, so I love to build car programs in, but I'll tell you an example. I had a client who was stupid. I told them I was designing their comp plan, and I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to create a car program, and the car has to be a hybrid or electric vehicle, because this will be amazing for your branding, because a lot of your product line it was a natural wellness company. Mm-hmm. And I said, it's just congruent with your product line. We're saving the rainforest. So you're going to have a car program, and they have to get, an EV or that kind of car. And they crumbled and they didn't do it. And I, to this day, I think it was a stupid mistake, because they missed an incredible opportunity, because it would have sent a message. But so I always build a car program in, and now I would say that to every client. Make it an EV thing. Make it about that. Make it about social responsibility. And I always build in reward trips, incentive trips. And they got to be to gorgeous, exotic locales. Fiji, Tahiti, whatever. Because I want them posted on Instagram and Facebook and sending pics back. And more importantly, creating memories.
Yep.
Because when we talk about, it's not about the money, it's about the lifestyle. That's what the lifestyle is. It's the memories and the relationships.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luca Maloney, he doesn't, he's an incredible leader from Peru. I got to have him on one of these Chop It Ups at some
Great.
point.
Yeah, great.
But he's always talked about at his training, he collects 3 things. He collects magnets, because his kids want a magnet from every city he goes to. He collects the hotel key, because they're just like a souvenir he wants. So he's kind of built a signature story about this. The 3 things he collects: the magnets, the hotel keys, and the memories.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a way that he wraps up his keynote, and it's really powerful. That's the stuff that's what I think we have to do more of, not in the bling bling. I'm in a $5,000 oceanfront suite. That's not going to land the way it did 10 years ago. But drinking out of a coconut is still drinking out of a coconut. Okay. And if you got a team member in Madison, Wisconsin in February, who's waking up to a 20 below zero wind chill factor, and they're going out to their Toyota with their ice scraper, and they are scraping the ice off the windows, and they're trying to preheat the car seats and run the engine for 10 minutes before they get in. And then their breath is fogging up the window because it's so bitterly cold outside. And they've got your little Instagram post with you drinking out of a coconut in Fiji. They might rethink their motivation of, should I make another 2 presentations tonight? Should I call another 5 candidates tonight? Right.
Yeah. Hey, so let me tell you one thing that you said about guys like me that were sitting in the room at the back of the room 26 years ago, 27. Something else you just said about, I remember you saying that day that he or she who writes the most cards, sends the most congratulations, does the most, they will build the biggest team. And I think you said something about also the team that will stick around the longest. And only this morning, I got a message, a WhatsApp from a girl. There's a couple, lovely couple in my team called Caroline and Pip. And she sent me, she got a postcard from me a couple of days ago. So she sent this saying, oh, you know, nice touch. Thank you so much. And then I messaged back saying, oh, you know, you must have a few of them now. Because I was like, you know, this is a regular thing for me. So she sent me a picture. I think you might be able to see it, of her fridge. So that is her fridge door. All of them are from me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then she sent me the side of her fridge. There's another 1, 2, 3, 4. There's another like 8 of them.
Amazing.
And, you know, that was such a great lesson. And you know, that's one of the things that I think you or lots of people have perhaps said this about, you know, the thing about being successful isn't always that you're the best at anything. It's just you're the person who bothers to do the stuff that most people don't bother to do. And that was one of those things that it would have been really easy not to do. But I have made that from that day, I will call that day one, a thing that in the early days, everybody got a handwritten welcome card when they joined anywhere in my team. They got handwritten congratulations cards when they hit ranks or got their first, you know, customer incentive or whatever. And I know people who 20 years on still have that faded,
100%
handwritten card. But now I have to be honest, because the way the business has grown, I have progressed to a bit of technology, you know, so, but if I'm in a place with someone and we get a selfie together, that's going to go on a postcard to them through their front door, because people don't get post anymore, do they? Not like they used to. So it stands out even more. So they get a postcard when they hit a rank, whatever. If they speak on the stage, if they come on one of my Zoom events or whatever, they get something that commemorates that moment. And it's lovely to see that people actually take pride in them and put them on their, you know, anchors them in that moment. And perhaps when it's a bad end of month and they think, oh, it's been so crap this month, I've done 26 presentations and nobody's joined, and and you know, my husband's annoyed with me or my wife, they see that and it takes them back to that moment. And I believe that's why I think I've got pretty decent retention. I've got leaders that are still with me today. I've got leaders that have quit and then come back 5 years later, leaders that got high ranks, then got stolen into a shiny object, and then 5 years later come back to me. Like, because maybe those little things, those little gestures.
I'm digging through my drawer here. I have stacks and stacks of cards and stuff. A lot of people watch this. They're going to have to Google this and say, you know, what is a postcard? What is a stamp, right? The effect that has on people, even my corporate clients, I'm always saying, listen, when everybody's zigging, you got to be zagging, you know, nobody's mailing anything anymore. So I find direct mail letters are really effective from a corporate standpoint. And then when you talk about in our space, when a leader of a team just, writes a card, which might take them 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Literally, it's as you say, 20 years later, they could come across that person and find out they're carrying that card around in their purse.
Yeah.
It's taped up on their refrigerator. They have a special shoebox of memories they keep it in. It's that human touch.
I've got two people that I've shared that with, well, probably more, but two that I know it really worked, who aren't even in our space. One of whom is a dog groomer. He grooms dogs. He gets 8 dogs a day, whatever, snip, snip. And I was like, surely you are going to take a photo of the dog at the end, sometimes have you in it as well, if the dog's friendly enough. And then you send them the postcard. They're never going to throw away a picture of their pretty dog looking at its prettiest. And if that's from you and it goes on the fridge, who are they going to ring the next time? Anyway, at first he thought I was crazy. And of course, he agreed to do it. And what did he say? Oh my God, I'm so busy, like repeat business. People keep coming. Of course they do. And I did it with a guy that sells, that doesn't sell. He does bathrooms, he fits, install, but he's high end, he's expensive. And because he's expensive, he does lots of quotes that don't go anywhere. But I was like, man, you've got to send them a handwritten something that says, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come and see your lovely home. It would be, I've sent you the quote. It would be an honor to. And again, he told me after that, he went from having like 1 in 10 quotes that said yes to like 3 in 10 or something. Like it just made that little difference. And I think we spend so long in this space looking for the next big thing, the next exciting tactic to build our business. And it's very easy to forget those little things.
If we build trust and we transfer belief, if you said, okay, if I was on the Tim Ferriss show and, he always asks his podcast people, hey, if you could have a billboard and you could write anything on it, what would you write? If I could have one billboard for people in direct selling, MLM, network marketing, it would be build trust, transfer belief. That's the magic. That's what the postcards and the calls and the text and the WhatsApp messages, at the live events, that's why the major events are so important, because that's where you build belief. You transfer your belief in them and you allow them to borrow that belief until they develop it themselves. And that, everybody, like you say, they're looking for the hack, for the downline building system and the lead generation system and the special social media program where you sit home in your bunny slippers and sponsor hundreds of people. Build trust, transfer belief. And if you only have 2 words on the billboard, just write build belief, build belief.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you something on that then. One thing I've really always admired about you, and I remember when I've been more than once to your tribal event. I think we went to Vegas one year and Fort Lauderdale, I think another year, and Miami. And maybe you'll have to tell people what tribal is in a minute. But you talked about owning your story, however controversial it can be. And obviously you've had the armed robbery situation, you've had drugs, and yet you've had, health issues that maybe had stigmas attached, but you've been open about making that part of your story. And, I don't find that so easy personally. Maybe it's the Britishness in me or whatever, but when was it you decided that you were going to own your story and share it? And if people didn't like it, that's okay.
I don't know if I ever made that as a conscious decision. I don't think I did. I think, however it happened naturally, incrementally, organically. I just remember I was when John Milton Fogg started Upline magazine, he started doing the events, which later became the mastermind event that Art does. So they were called the Upline Masters event, was the first one. He did one. They didn't know if they would ever do another one. So it was me, Mark Yarnell, Richard Brooke, might have been Sandy Ellsberg, might have been Jan Rue. But there were 6 of us at the very first one. And they asked each of us to do a presentation. They gave us each like 90 minutes. And I was the first one. So I was just sketching out my presentation. Like, okay, what do these are these committed people, totally generic, all different companies from all different countries around the world. How do I build out my session? What's the key note that I want to get across? What are the things I want to train on? And then you look for, how do I open the speech? How do I grab their attention in the first 30 seconds and get them leaning in? And I always like to do that. I like to start with some shocking statement, controversial statement, intriguing question, surprising question or statement. You've been to my speaker training stuff. You're never allowed to say, oh, thank you so much for that kind introduction. It's so great to be here in Dubuque, Iowa. No, you find one thing, and then you have this, what is the opening? And I thought, I need to tell the opening of my opening. I need to tell the story of being in jail for armed robbery at 15 years old. That was the first time I ever told that story. I don't know why I chose that event or what led me to it, but I remember doing the speech and opening with that story. And I came off the stage, and Mark Yarnell came running to me, and he said, that is the most amazing speech I have ever heard in my life. I can't believe you had the courage to do that. How could you dare to tell people that? And he was just speechless. He was just spitting and sputtering for like 3 minutes. And of course, I got an incredible response from the audience, and that just anchored it for me. And from that point on, I realized that is my superpower. Because what people think when they do a speech or a presentation like that is they're supposed to present themselves as perfect. That, hey, I'm perfect. Everything I do works out perfect. And you're paying me money because I'm perfect. And you hired me because you're not perfect. And you need someone to show you how to get perfect. But that doesn't work in the real world, because there are no perfect people. We're only perfect in the sense of our imperfections. And so when I'm coaching the people at my platform skills thing, and by the way, anyone want to come? We're recording this in February of 2023. I do it every year, but in 2023, it's going to be end of April. So go to randygage.com and click on Catch Randy Live if you're interested in that, and you can get the details. It's an extraordinary event. So when I'm doing events like that, or just coaching with people on my team, I'm always people say, where do you get the content for your stories? Like, man, I went to the success blank event, with Peter, whatever his name is, that promoter, and Tony Robbins, and, they had Zig Ziglar, and they had all the, Kiyosaki, there'd be 45 speakers over a day or whatever. And they're like, I never won a gold medal at the Olympics. I never climbed Mount Everest. What would I talk about? And what you've got to understand is it's the real world stuff from your life that make the powerful impact on the audience. And one of the most important things you have to do from the platform is, whether it's a paid speech or training your team or speaking at your company convention, is you have to show people that you're qualified to teach them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they think you're you wouldn't have seen it yet because it's not posted at the time we're recording this, but I did a chopping it up with Bricia Licari. Her and her husband, Angelo, are top income earners in the world at their company. They're incredible. There's storybook. If you call central casting and say, I need the perfect couple to demonstrate network marketing to be on the homepage of the website, they would send you Angelo and Bricia. They're both gorgeous, young, vibrant, beautiful. They've created incredible wealth in the business. They live in this beautiful home and, in this beautiful community. And people see that and think, oh, well, yeah, if I was perfect like that, of course I would be successful. So Angelo and Bricia, they have to tell their story of how they started and what they went through then. And right, you show people you're qualified to teach them. So they have to, the best trainings are the ones where you talk about the worst presentation you ever gave.
Yeah.
The worst rejection, the nastiest rejection you ever received. The difficult, darkest part of your career when you were losing your shirt in the business, because that's what shows the people that you're qualified to teach them. And what they want to know is, has this person been where I am, so that they, I know, can I know, how do I get the belief that this can work for me? What did we say? Build belief, build belief, build belief, right? So when I tell that story, people wake up, they sit up, because they say, wait a minute, this is one of the wealthiest people in the world. And he was sitting in a jail cell for armed robbery at 15 years old, teenage drug addict, teenage alcoholic. It's, I don't know. It was an instinctual thing for me. Intuitive, maybe is the right word, but anyone else in the world, I think, who was in jail for armed robbery as a child would never let anyone else in the world know about it when they were an adult.
Yeah.
Right? They would bury that in the past.
Yeah.
But anything you bear, this is what, sometimes I'm working with political candidates and everybody has skeletons in their closet. That's the first thing I say to them. Okay, what's the skeletons in your closet that we need to get out? We got to get that out in the open. It has to come from you. It can't come from your opponent.
Yeah.
And come on, did you do coke in college? Were you a cocaine addict? Did you, what about you? Have you been married before? Did you blow up that marriage? How did the marriage? Because you had an affair? Tell me the truth. Real world, don't bullshit me. What happened? Because if you can show that you've made a mistake and you sincerely are sorry for that mistake and you were able to turn it around, that's the story everybody wants to hear. That's the story everybody loves to hear.
Yeah.
And that's what, I think that's where the human connection is. I go back one more example for presenting and speaking. I'm doing, and you've seen it, right? You and I have been on big events with lots of people and everybody's got their glitz and their bling and their 86-point PowerPoint thing and their audio visual and they're dressed to the nines and they did the makeup and I get introduced and I come out and I'm wearing a t-shirt and blue jeans and sneakers and I sit on a bar stool for 45 minutes and I chat with the audience, and then I leave and I'm the highest ranking session at the event.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm talking with people, not at people.
Yeah.
I'm talking about topics that matter to them. And I am religiously, relentlessly asking myself, how do I turn this to the audience?
Yeah.
So, because there are people who really have won gold medals, they really have climbed Mount Everest. And I'm speaking against those people because at my fee level, I'm getting hired by companies that are hiring $35,000, $50,000, $75,000 speakers. And so this is my competitors. And I haven't won any gold medals. Oh, well, I actually have, but it was in the gay games. It's not quite the same as the Olympic games. All right. I've won my softball championships. That's not quite the same as winning the World Series. You know, I've been the top income earner in my company. That's not quite the same as being Elon Musk and the wealthiest person in the world. Right. So I don't have their stories, but I know how to turn my stories to the audience that they can relate to. So I'm actually on a program with a lady who won 5 Olympic gold medals, or maybe a couple silver, but she won 5 medals. So she wears them on her speech. She goes out on stage and then afterward you can take a picture with her and maybe you can hold one of her medals. And so we're at this convention and I do my speech. She does her speech. We're in the green room afterward, you know, scarfing down the cheese and crackers. And she says, can you help me? I don't understand. The audience just loved you. They gave you that standing ovation. They wouldn't sit down. They wouldn't stop clapping. I didn't get that kind of response here. I never get that kind of response. Can you tell me what is the secret? Why aren't they? And so I tried to, you know, coach her in a loving way as possible. Is she just went and told the story of how she earned 5 gold medals, and everybody clapped, and it was an inspirational story, but nobody in the audience related that to their life and their career or their business. And what I told her is the only reason you tell your story is to provide a lesson for the audience. Mm-hmm. And we've got to teach all of our people in this business, especially because they think the reason they're given the keynote speech at the company convention is because they achieved the Supreme Universal Commander rank. Mm. But that's not why we gave you the platform. We're giving you the platform because we want you to tell the story of how you achieved the Supreme Universal Commander rank and how the audience can do the same thing. Yeah. What are the lessons in your journey for them? And you remember back, I don't know, before the pandemic, I did a leadership session for Arts Mastermind. It was a extra leadership symposium. Yeah, you know, that I think it was only for people who made $1 million a year or more. Yeah. So it's supposed to be a breakout session, just the top leaders. So I give what I think to this day is one of the most brilliant leadership sessions has ever been conducted since the Earth's crust cooled. Modestly speaking, humbly speaking, of course.
Understated.
So I remember I start the presentation and I say, so you drive a new bonus car. Nobody gives a fuck. So you're making more than $100,000 a month. Nobody gives a fuck. So I do 4 or 5 of those to get their attention. And then I do this amazing session of how you turn those things around to the team, how to turn them into, hey, I'm up here beating on my chest, showing you how great I am. Might as well spray paint your name on the moon. That's for all the good it's going to do. No, it's not about beating your chest. It's about what is the lesson for your new distributor who just bought their first distributor kit. They spent $180 on their first product order, which they had to put on a credit card and go into debt because they're that choked up with their income and their money. What is the lesson for them? And I was so excited, and Art walked in the room and I told, let me tell you, I just had the most incredible. And he said, yes, I just had a lady who's got 27 people here and she's going to take them all and leave because she said you were dropping the F-bomb on stage. And she's so offended and she never wants to come back. And it was like the most deflating thing.
Yeah.
Because, and that's my fault, right? That needs to be advertised in advance. Like this thing, every one of these has a warning. Warning, explicit language. I don't want anyone playing this in the car with their 4-year-old in the back seat and not knowing, hey, Gage talks like a drunken sailor, okay? Swears like a drunken sailor. So that needed to be presented in there. But I still feel to this day like that was one of the most powerful sessions I've ever conducted. And I've replicated that with many clients since. Because that's the lesson people, they think it's a reward. And in a sense it is, right? We do want to reward people for reaching these superhuman ranks, but it's not only a reward, it's a responsibility. And we need you to take what my friend Naomi Rhodey calls the privilege of the platform.
Yeah.
To take the privilege of that platform and the responsibility that comes with the platform and turn that around to what's the lesson for the audience.
Yes. But I don't know if I'm sure you've seen this as well. When I speak for other companies or whatever, sometimes you see that the culture of the company or the person emceeing or hosting or introducing that speaker, they're not doing them any favors. Because if you do a really crap introduction, particularly for somebody that's an unknown, they come on feeling, I have to justify myself. Like I have to prove why I'm so good. And then they end up bleating about themselves. Whereas I think, and this is why I quite like hosting a lot of the time, when I do mastermind and stuff, you get the chance to set up that person to tell their story, like have the audience in no doubt at all why they have to listen to this 7-minute presentation or 27-minute or whatever. And so that comes down to sponsors, uplines, leaders, companies, corporates, whatever, actually doing a better job of getting them on stage and assuring them, listen, you don't have to tell everyone how many swimming medals you've got and how many, like they're going to know how and why everyone has to listen to you. Is that fair?
It's so important. One of the, I do this with my professional speaking clients, and I do this with the leaders in my own team. I tell them, you need a photo shoot. We need a good headshot of you. We need a good 3/4 shot of you. And we need an action shot of you on stage. Or if they're an athlete, I want an action shot of them, in the pool or on the track or on the course or whatever the case may be. You need a official bio, and you need an official introduction. So the bio gets posted on the website ahead of time. The bio goes out in the email or the text advertising the event ahead of time. The introduction tells the MC or the introducer how to position you so that you don't face that exact situation that you just described. And so that's the first thing. So there's just, everybody in every company should know there's like a benchmark rate, a rank, like, okay, you've reached the XYZ rank. Now you need the bio, the photo, the introduction, because people are going to make flyers when you come to town. And we need to say, Sarah is building in 11 different countries and has a team of more than 5,000 people.
Yeah.
She's an expert at how to build your dreams, and she's here tonight to show you how you can do the same thing.
Yes.
Okay. Julio has been working with the company in 4 years, and he's already achieved the esteemed rank of so-and-so, and he's personally sponsored 7 platinum directors. He's an expert at creating duplication, building residual income, and tonight he's going to be sharing some of his secrets on how you can do that.
Yeah.
You set him up, right? Yeah. So you get to that rank, and then everybody has to assemble those materials. And then you're still going to get the person who says, the person who's speaking tonight needs no introduction, so I'm not giving him one. Here's Wes Linden. Okay. Yeah. And they didn't send out the bio in advance, and they didn't put it up on the website. It happens all the time. You still have to check yourself and realize, no, I don't have to bleed out my accomplishments because nobody really cares.
Yeah.
What I've got to do is talk about my journey and how it applies to the audience. And if I do that, even the fact that I wasn't positioned right, I wasn't introduced right, they never knew a thing about me, I will still be the person at the end of the day. They say, oh my God, that guy Jimmy from the Netherlands changed my life. They won't even know his last name. They will know that his name was Jimmy. He had red hair and he was from the Netherlands, and he spoke to their soul.
Yeah.
That's the gift we get to give in this profession.
Yeah. You just reminded me of my first mastermind event where I was speaking. And I think it was 9 years ago now. And back in that, so I'd gone from being a big fish in a small pond, as in my company, to suddenly arriving on an aeroplane into America, which to British people is a big thing, to speak at the mastermind. And so I've gone from big fish in small pond to tiny fish in big pond. And I knew that I went from being, probably one of the most highest rated speakers in my company to being the novice who's been given 10 minutes and nobody has heard of and nobody knows. And in one respect, that's a great challenge, because you're pushing yourself out your comfort zone. In another respect, it's hard. And so I remember I flew to America 3 or 4 days early because I thought I really want to get myself grounded and no jet lag and get used to the time zone and the language and whatever. And I had Big Al actually was great because he came and met me a few days early, and he arranged like a Tuesday night in Miami and a Wednesday or somewhere, and a Wednesday night in Fort Lauderdale or whatever it was. And we got in a car and drove 3 hours and spoke to, and I did my presentations that I was going to do for the mastermind in front of an audience of 107 people in a Holiday Inn, and, learned what English words don't work in America, or started to learn, and what, people in England find hilarious that in America they're just sitting there going, oh, that's interesting, because of the humor difference and stuff. So that was really useful. But I used to have this thing, and I don't have it anymore, but I used to have this kind of pre-event anxiety where the day before, I would I would go in my bedroom or hotel room, close the door, blackout curtains down, lights off, and I just lie in bed. Not like a quivering wreck, whatever like that, but as in I just couldn't focus on being anywhere else other than thinking about this event the next day. And so there I was in this hotel room in the Intercontinental, wherever this mastermind was being held, in the hotel, and it's like 4:30, and that night there was a VIP dinner or something. So I knew I had until 6 o'clock to get changed, and then I had to be at the thing for 6 o'clock. And my phone starts flashing. I'm like, and I wasn't answering my phone. I didn't want to speak to people because I just didn't want distractions. But it was Art. And he's like, where are you? And I'm like, oh, just hanging out in my room. I didn't say with the lights off and wearing my down and pajamas. And he was like, we're doing a new speaker rehearsal for all the new speakers. Can you come to room whatever, the function room, whatever? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want this. So I grabbed my notes, got changed, walked down this corridor, said to one of the janitors or bellboys, where's the, Millennium Suite or whatever. That way. Anyway, as soon as I got into the corridor, I knew which room it was because the door was open and I could hear your voice and Art's voice. I'm like, okay. So I creep down quite slowly, try not to make a noise, look into the room, and there is Eugene Hong. Wonderful guy, Eugene, he's a top leader in his company in, I think it's LA, and wonderful guy. He's also a first-year speaker. He's standing there, and he's white, like a sheep. And I can see it, but I managed to do an angle that I could see in, but you couldn't see me. And Eugene is standing there, and there's you, Art, and Orion Saleh. And I think Hilda was there as well. Like the X Factor, like with Simon Cowell and the judges. Yeah. And he's standing there white. Marco Passanante, who's a great leader in Europe, he's always looks suave and tanned and everything. No tan on him at all. He's white with anticipation as to what's going to come. And I'm like, so I start to do the Michael Jackson moonwalk, kind of backward, like away from this, because I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this. I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna get my passport. I'm gonna fly home. I'm gonna say I'm ill. Oh my God. Anyway, I had a word with myself and thought, come on, you got to do this. So I went in. Oh, sorry, I'm late. I didn't even know I was supposed to be there, but I felt like I was late for a class or school thing or something. And then I sat there waiting to listen to Eugene get advice. I mean, he was white as a ghost because he was intimidated, like he was scared, but you weren't being scary. It was just intimidating. First time speaker, and there you guys sitting there. And Marco's sitting there, hello, and I'm like, hello. And he's white. Oh. And I sat there feeling sick, rewriting my thing about 50 times. But there is an end to this story. The advice, and this is why I think your speaking school would be great for people. The advice that you guys gave me then because my introduction was about 17, I only had 10 minutes or something, and the introduction was 17 minutes or something, telling everybody every single detail. And you turned my 17-minute introduction into about 7 words, like the shock statement.
Right.
Oh God, it was... what a lesson. And I still relay that when I do any kind of coaching with my team now or speakers and stuff, relay that story about they don't need to hear every single detail. Let's just take the headline and give it to them like that. But the intimidation factor as well, I think people quite like that when I share that, because I guess people always think that if you're quite good on stage, you've always been quite good on stage.
No, look how you have done with that. You've done such an amazing job. You're such a great platform presenter now, and being hired by other companies and mastermind event, being the MC now for however many years. You're brilliant on the platform. You're You do just an incredible job with it, and you're a testament to what happens when people work on their craft. That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. Do you have any like success, self-development, personal growth route? Do you have like a routine, a daily routine that you do?
I think, because I think, I have been, without trying to sound like the gold medalist or something, who's got the 5 gold medals, I have been an achiever. I've achieved in speaking. I used to be a professional soccer referee, got to, the championship level in the UK, which is, top
big
1%.
Big deal. Yeah. Big deal.
And obviously same in my company. And I sometimes have this conversation in my own head of imposter syndrome of like, how on earth did you get there? Because, you dropped out of university, you dropped out of, your A levels, you couldn't complete them properly, and all that stuff. And I think my thing has always been about that mantra of do today what others won't, so you can do tomorrow what others can't. And so to me, I think I've always been okay with being the tortoise, not the hare, and just braving it, like that time when it would have been easier to get in the lift and go back, elevator, go back home and not face that speaker X factor moment. I think that's just been it. I've always been prepared to not be very good, and until you become okay, and then be prepared to be embarrassed. And as a referee in soccer, I mean, that was torturous,
to be a referee in soccer in the UK. Oh my God. That's like being the most wanted, there's got to be days you're the most hated man in the country.
Yeah. But, and that there's TV cameras, and that the next day on Sky News, Sky Sports News, it's going to be every 15 minutes, rolling news repeated if you make a mistake. But I would still say that actually the hardest part of my refereeing career wasn't then when I was kind of good and respected and rated. It's when I was crap and unfit and didn't know where to run and doing like football between 2 pub teams where they are drunk from the night before, and it's 10:30 in the morning and they got a hangover and they're moody with each other and they're overweight, and they're there to have fun, but they're not thinking rationally. And there's 3 people watching with a dog who runs on occasionally to chase the ball.
Yeah,
that was harder.
Yeah,
than 40,000 people in front of TV cameras, because you are in the firing line. And so I relate that to our business or to speaking or whatever else, that you've got to do lots of crap presentations and have lots of rejections and be laughed at and ridiculed. I remember once getting in my car after a game at it was a 10:30 in the morning game. So it was between 2 pub teams. They were rival pubs from rival areas where most of the players had flirted with one of the other players' wives or some, girlfriends. And there was all this tension. They'd been at opposite schools, that hated each other, like all of this stuff. And it was horrible. And I got in my car, turned the ignition on, and couldn't see out the window because somebody, one of the players or several of them, had plastered my windscreen with a porno magazine and stuck it all over my screen.
Unbelievable.
So all I'm seeing is basically naked pornographic pictures. And you talked before about getting the de-icer. Try de-icing porn or somebody else's porn off your windscreen.
Amazing.
And I'd earned £30 for doing that game. It was the worst. But relate that to our type of business as well. You got to do those crap presentations where people laugh at you, where they slam the front door at you, where you get up on stage and nobody claps or laughs, or you say something and people shake their head with disappointment, or, you get one slow hand clap. Like, you've got to do those things So I think that's, in answer to your question, my success trait is be prepared to go through being crap and being laughed at and ridiculed. Because if you do today what others won't, you can do tomorrow what others can't. You can't shortcut. There's no shortcut.
There's no shortcut. There's no shortcut. How's the demographics of your team personally, age-wise, millennials, boomers, how you're 25 years in? What does your team look like today?
Totally different to 5, 10 years ago, probably 10. It's totally now, I would say, there are some 20s, but I would say the 30 to 40s, 45s, young parents, lot of mums, and professionals, people that, a lot of people from teaching backgrounds or teaching assistants, people that run small businesses or have run small businesses, police officers. But now they want a better life. They want more free time, and they want to do some extra things that they couldn't do before. And I think maybe social media's helped with that, because everybody gets to see everybody's edited highlights reel of people snowboarding or people ice skating or going to the theater. And it's, I think, made people hungry for more experiences. And I think we've got a lot of people like that who don't want to go into their overdraft, but still want to do the nice things. Whereas if I look back 10 years ago, we were very male, very pinstripe suit, very kind of 45, 50 plus. It's completely changed. Really, most of my top leaders now are women. And I find, I really enjoy working with them.
I spent the first 20 years of my training explaining to people why service companies don't work in network marketing. That it only works with products.
Yeah.
You need products unique, exclusive, highly consumable, create emotional attachment. And your company is a service company. For people who don't know, his company does utilities, stuff like that. So, and your company is one of the companies that completely blew up that premise that you could not do this successfully with a service. What do you, any thoughts just on service companies in general, or things you would say to other people who are working or thinking about joining a service company?
Yeah, look, as you say, we're a utility company, so it's essential household services, energy or power, gas, electric, phone, broadband, insurance and stuff. And we kind of make a thing of the fact that there is boring. It's like we own in the fact it's boring, but it's also essential. And so if you can find a company that's offering services that people have to use without even thinking about it, then that feels like a good place to be right now. Now, that's not knocking the product business. I've got lots of great friends, as you have, in product businesses, but obviously they're going to have ups and downs, as they always have, with reordering and auto shipping. And, if it's not that vital to someone's life, do they spare the $100 for it this month?
Yeah.
Or do they skip a month? And so for us, I think in a cost of living crisis, we've probably come into our own a little bit in that regard. I mean, that's not exclusive to us. I know there's companies in the States that do essential services, insurances and health insurances and life covers and stuff. And again, that, for the one I'm thinking of, two I'm thinking of in particular, seem to be thriving right now, as people are more conscious of their health and looking after themselves and making sure their family's supported and the home is safe and stuff like that. But different strokes for different folks.
The other thing you are amazing at, and your company, it is this customer culture. I think you and your team, and Hilda and Orion and Art and their team, they're the benchmarks in the profession of building a big customer base. And I mean a huge, viable customer base that people in the legacy companies and some of the newer, flavor of the week companies are just, they have no idea. There's a lot of companies that think it's a big deal if everybody has 3 customers. And of course, we still have the dinosaurs out there who are just, it's all about the recruiting. You just want the business builders. It's, obviously they're playing cassette tapes of my old trainings from 30 years ago, because I was the guy saying all those things. I taught, 2 generations of network marketers that the customers don't matter, because that's where it was at that point. And it really was the market at that. Those days are long gone. And now I've been trying the last 2 generations to teach them that it's all about the customers. But nobody's done that better than you guys, you and, Art, Hilda, and Orion that I mentioned. Art's been on this chopping up, by the way. Hilda is scheduled for a chopping up, and Orion is scheduled for a chopping up. So stay tuned, everybody. You're going to hear from all those people. But can you talk, what is your secret? Tell people the level of customers you guys have, and what's your secret for doing it?
Yeah, so, as a company, we're approaching 1 million customers, using between them over 3 million services in the UK, which is, I guess, a relatively small island, although we think it's the center of the universe. It's obviously not. As one of the kind of top leaders, my team has a pretty good chunk of that. And I have to say, we have always had in my team that our culture has been, help people save money using our service, and make an extra income. So not just recruit, but do both, like row with both oars. Different people have different philosophies. There are other people in our organization who just recruit. And some of them have bigger teams than me. And I know that we still put on more customers than them. And ultimately, customers produce the volume that produce the commissions that create the legacy incomes, because otherwise lots of people on zero, don't build any revenue. And so that has always been a culture. I mean, if anything, I perhaps got too skewed towards customers and not enough towards team at some points. But again, one of the things I think I've learned from being around the mastermind people, around you and Art and Hilda and Orion and others like that, is being open to realizing that what you do and what you think isn't the only way. And so if I talk about some of those other leaders that do have a strong recruitment philosophy, I've been much more open the last few years to listening to them and learning, okay, what can we take from their recruitment and put into our philosophy, into our culture, rather than let's just copy it. Let's take what we can and mold that into the business. And I think we've got a much better balance now.
Yeah, this is one of the things I'm working with people like that, okay, you really have handled the customer thing, and great, now you're doing $300 million because you've done this incredible customer base. But if you want to get to $1 billion, you're going to have to bring in more of the recruiting part of the equation.
Yes.
And of course, most of the time I'm telling the recruiting people, you've got to bring in more of the customer equation. That's the biggest problem in our space, is that they don't have the customer stuff. Just for curiosity, you personally,
yes,
how many retail customers do you have?
So I currently now have around 100 or so retail customers.
Wow.
I mean, I have had more than that, but obviously over time, people, move house or die or, go elsewhere or whatever, sadly. So I have about 100 retail customers, but if I look at my income, and this was, again, something I learned early days from you and Big Al and stuff like that, I get a nice little income from my personal customers that would just about cover a third of my mortgage. And yet my residual income from building, leverage is 100 times greater than it or something like that. I mean, and that's what the dream was about, becoming unimportant to the creation of your income, that you're not dependent on your own efforts. Your own efforts can do a bit, but you help lots of other people. And that's where the long-term wealth comes from.
Yeah, as a matter, I actually spoke at Hilda and Orion's last event in Oslo a couple of months ago, and that's what they asked me to speak about was, hey, how do we get more of the recruiting element into it? Because they have a lot of people like you with 100 customers. For a lot of people in my space, the idea of 100 customers, 100 personal retail customers is so astounding. Is there a culture you set, like how many customers do they want to sign up? Like, let's say your get started training or your new team member orientation. Do you have a certain like barometer of, hey, you want to get X number of customers in X amount of time?
Yeah, I mean, there are some little mini ranks that people can achieve, and that's for getting to 3 and then to 6 and then 10. But each time they want to climb the ladder, that does involve them pushing their own personal up a little bit as well. It's not the only thing that does it, but you can get to the top of the plan with 100, and you can get to a really great level in the plan, with 25.
Mm-hmm.
But, in our culture is you've got to know how to get customers. You've got to know how to do it. You've got to have experience doing it. And because you've got to be able to help your team understand how they do it and whatever. Yeah. But, listen, I don't know if this is the same with every business, but, I've got a guy in my team who hit 1,000 customers a couple of months ago, personal customers. He has 1,000.
Amazing.
He went from 200 to 1,000 in about 15 months. He's like doing 2 a day or something, like, 2 or 3 a day. Like,
yeah.
And yeah, in our business, and I'm sure this is the same in lots of other businesses, that in itself would produce a life-changing passive income for him.
Oh, absolutely. Right.
Not living in a castle in the Maldives or Mauritius necessarily, but don't have to go to work, don't have to have an alarm clock, can go on holiday lots of so that's, I think, to me, one of the barometers of a company. Could you make money with retail product alone, or do you have to recruit? And I'm proud of the fact that in our business people can join and earn great money up front just by introducing customers, which to me means it's not a money game. There's not a scammy kind of passing on joining fees and stuff. Obviously I don't have the breadth of experience that you do in the space, but that's always been a bit of a barometer to me. Can people make money from us without having to recruit if they don't want to?
Yeah. This is the challenge I'm faced with a lot of clients now, is because they're saying, well, we try to get customers. And I say, no, you're really not. And they say, why do you say that? And I say, because I'm looking at your compensation plan. And you have a bonus car. You give everybody a Mercedes Benz when they reach this rank. Yeah, what's wrong with that? I said, well, that can only be achieved by a business builder. There's no way for a retailer to earn that car.
Yeah.
Oh, we never thought about that.
Yeah.
You have your trip every January. You take everybody to Fiji. There's no way a retailer can qualify for that trip because they've set the qualifications of you need this volume, this level, and you need 5 qualified director ranks or 4 qualified diamond lines or 6 qualified supervisor lines or whatever. And a retailer would never have any of those things. So you're telling retailers from the start, you're never going to qualify for the good stuff. This is only for the people who are recruiting. And that's a mistake. You've got to have, every goodie in the comp plan should have a way for that, that retailer to get that goodie in the plan, whether it's a trip, a car, infinity bonus, matching bonus, this or that, or any other kind of thing. All right, little glitch there. We had a lightning strike in London, which scrambled the transmission a little, but we're back. You got anything else on your list that we haven't covered?
I have. I want to ask you something. I remember you talking about you would rather sit at home pressing refresh on the back office in your underwear than go and do a presentation and meet 4 strangers in somebody else's house. And, if you, as you have spent time with Big Al, you will know that Big Al off the stage does not find it easy, although he's good with people, he doesn't find it easy, he's, socially. And then I think about myself when I said to you, I used to, go to your event. I went to your event, sat in the last from back row, so I didn't get picked on, I didn't get spoken to. And when I was, in my first few years at school, I was always quite shy. I remember my life, when you went to school the first time, everybody had a badge with their name on. Well, after 3 days, you get rid of the badge. I wanted it for like 4 weeks or something because I just didn't want to have to talk to people, tell people. So whatever people see of us on the stage and on Zooms and in team meetings and stuff, I feel like, from what you've said, you have a shyness, you have a social kind of awkwardness. And I know that I sometimes do as well. I have to brace myself for these things sometimes. Do you think that that's endemic in our profession about people that do well? That there is that thing that they have to break out of? Or is it just a coincidence? Have I just picked a coincidence and that's that? And what has helped you over that to become the guy that can be on the platform and can sign the, do the photos and do the small talk?
That's an amazing question, and a lot of ways I can go with that. The first thing is, I think Big Al and you and I are the exception, not the rule. I do feel that there are more extroverts who are successful than introverts who are successful. Just because I think more people are extroverted. The human animal is a social animal. It exists in tribes. It has always existed in tribes throughout the course of human history. And people, things that just seem petrifying to me are delightful to other people. I grew up at a time where we didn't know so much about human psychology and mental illness and societal challenges. I only recently, as in like maybe a year or two ago, came to learn that I'm on the autism spectrum. When I grew up, there was nobody in the world who was talking about the autism spectrum, okay? The only spectrum we knew was the surround sound spectrum of Phil Spector, recording in the studio with rock stars.
Yeah.
I was, the technical diagnosis for me was Randy's a weird child. That was the only diagnosis that my mother received from the doctors and the teachers is, Randy's very strange. And that was no revelation to her. She knew her middle child was not the same as the other two. There was something different about this kid.
Yeah.
As I got older, I said, okay, I guess it's social anxiety disorder, because I was hearing about that on TV and news maybe in the last decade or two. I just knew that I never had a problem on stage because I'm in total control of the agenda. I'm the only one talking. I've got the mic. I know exactly what I want to say and why I want to say it. So put me in front of 10,000 people and I'm good to go. I also know that when the elevator door is closing and there's 4 or 5 people in the elevator and I'm 20 feet away from the elevator, I'm going to slow down and I'm going to let the door close, because I want to wait for the next elevator and hopefully there's nobody on that elevator. I'm going to be dating someone and they're going to say, can we go to a party? My in-laws are having a whatever, or, I'm going to beg my way out of it let me not affirm that, cancel that. In the past, I would have begged my way out of it every time. And then if I did, at some point it's like, Randy, we've been dating for 3 years now. You have to meet my family. Okay, I'm going to go. And then was petrified and I was the wallflower, right? So the autism explains a lot of that. But I had to cure that before I had the diagnosis. I had to cure that to be successful in the business.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to meet people, because that's one of the most important skill sets we have. And I needed to learn how to have conversations with people. And I was fortunate enough to stumble across the realization that the best way to meet people in a non-stressful way is to put yourself in situations of shared commonality. And I really learned that when I was 40. I was hired to keynote at a convention, and they said, hey, we're thinking about doing a charity golf tournament the day before the convention to raise money for our foundation or whatever. If we do that, would you come? I'm like, no, I've never picked up a golf club in my life. That looks like the most boring sport, But if you do a softball game, I'll come to that. I love baseball. So they said, all right, we'll make it a softball tournament. We want you there and we want to raise money for the charity. So at 40 years old, I played in softball. First time since I was a kid. I've been a diehard baseball fan my whole life, but I was a wallflower. I sat in my room and listened to AM radio and read books. So I didn't play Little League. I didn't play high school. I didn't play anything. And my mom didn't have the money to buy equipment or that stuff anyway. Yeah. So at 40 years old, I finally got to play the game that I loved as a fan my whole life. And I'm like, this is incredible. I make a lot of money. I have freedom. I could do this. So I went and looked in like a magazine bar guide thing, and they had a thing for a softball league. And I called the number and said, I want to play. And they said, yeah, come out. Sunday is our league. Come out and get here at this time. My name's so-and-so. I'm the manager. Ask for me. And it was only when I was driving up there that I started to get a kind of a panic attack. Like, oh my God, I'm going to this event that I don't know anybody on this team. and I'm going to be on this team with 12 or 15 other guys. And I was really scared, and I almost turned back, but I was so excited to actually play. I had so much fun at that tournament, and I learned I could really hit home runs, So I kept going. And then as I was driving home, it dawned on me what a great time I had. And I didn't remember everybody's name on the team, but it's like it didn't feel awkward because I didn't have to stand there and make small talk, which is what you have to do in an elevator or at a party.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, here, you're going to play this position. Hey, have you ever played this position? Are you good at throwing? Are you good at catching? How do you bat? And you're working on the mechanics of the game, so you don't have time to get nervous. And then I took that into my career and my training for myself first, and then for my team. Like, hey, if you're walking down the street in Paris and you're wearing a Real Madrid jersey, and somebody else comes walking the other way with a Real Madrid jersey, you're going to have a conversation.
Yeah.
If you're sitting on an airplane and you're wearing a Chicago Cubs sweaty hoodie, and somebody walking down the aisle is wearing a Cubs hat, they're going to say, hey, Cubs fan, waiting in line for the new Marvel, blockbuster. It's a shared experience. And so I just learned, okay, I'm going to find ways to put myself in shared experiences. And I made millions of dollars just from relationships that I developed because I didn't turn my car around that day, and I went to the softball field. Because I started playing in the league, then I started playing in other leagues, then I started going to tournaments. My second year, I put together a team. We went to the World Series and we won it. And so I started meeting softball players all over North America and developing, again, there was no pressure, because even the guys you're playing against, when you come to the batter's box, there's a guy who's catcher. Hey, how you doing? Tap him with the bat, whatever. The third tournament you play against him, now you know his name. By the fifth tournament you play against him, hey, how did you guys do? I know you went to the Phoenix tournament. I didn't go to that. How did it go? Oh, man, it was horrible. It rained all day. It was amazing. The weather was perfect. My team came in second place. We just lost the championship game by 1 run in the bottom of oh my God, 1 run. What happened? It's a shared experience. So there's no stress whatsoever. And, it's probably really good I didn't know my diagnosis, because then we would have done some stupid psychological thing, whereas I just stumbled across the answer naturally, which is, hey, because when you're in extroverts, they draw energy from people. Introverts, we get the energy sucked out of us. I go on that stage with this 10,000 people and it's electrifying, we're rock and rolling. But man, then I got to go back to the hotel room, and I can't even go to the restaurant for dinner. I got to get room service. I just have to sit in that room for 4 hours by myself to recharge. But then, like in our business, it's the same with the relationships developed. So now, you're going to Chicago and you're going to do a training for the team there, but you have a personal enrollee there, and you have 5 people that under him or her that you met at the last convention. So you do a little leadership brunch the night before, the day before, the day after. You start to develop those relationships. And then it's not a stressful thing to go, because there's team members who and you like. Yes. And it's to me, that's been the lifesaver for me that I got in this business. Because if I didn't, I don't know, I would be working in a lighthouse somewhere,
Mm.
where I just made the light spin around and I never saw another human being, because I just became such a loner,
Mm.
because of my fear of social interactions, and this business really helped me
Mm.
crawl out of that and really, become comfortable in the real world with real people.
Do you think, and obviously both of us share the fact that we are gay and not didn't grow up in a kind of normal situation. I put normal in inverted commas if
Yeah.
people are listening to this rather than watching it. And certainly for me, there was a period when I was, I don't know, 8 or 9, when I realized I was, inverted commas, different. And then 12 or 13, even more different. And it wasn't changing. And, I'm obviously a bit younger than you, but even then in the UK, it wasn't like Stonewall or something like that, but there were no role models. I think Elton John he was either still in the closet or he was slightly ridiculed because of his glasses, and he was eccentric. The biggest TV series, two biggest TV things, Coronation Street, you might have heard of, there was no gay characters. EastEnders, there was one gay character and nobody liked him and he got AIDS and died. So as a kid growing up, that's your role model. That's, it's either eccentric, silly people or strange, that's how they're perceived, or not there at all, or, get AIDS and die. So to me, growing up, there was also this thing of, I don't want to be around people too much because they might ask me something about my life and then I might not be able to cover it up. And then, and that carried on. I mean, I did eventually get through that after having some girlfriends and then realizing, actually the world probably is a bit more open to my choices than I had thought. And so, maybe when I was 20, actually probably a year after I started in the business, I decided to, kind of come out. But I think I carried that into my 20s a little bit, that shyness of, if I talk to people too much, they might realize who I really am, and I don't really want to talk about that, and I don't want to be, I don't feel like that now, but I certainly feel that now. You obviously were a decade or so before me. Does that connect with you at all?
Yeah, so I just always knew I was different. I couldn't quantify it. I always, just assumed the aliens had left me in a basket on my mother's doorstep and she had adopted me and taken me in, because I certainly couldn't have come from this world. But the saving grace for me was my formative years were in the Woodstock generation, the 70s.
Okay.
And I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, which is an extremely liberal place because it's a college town. And it's a pretty, it's a decent university. It's not Harvard or Stanford or whatever, but for the people who don't have the financial resources to go to a Harvard or a Yale or a Stanford, it's one of those universities that's reasonably priced, that has a good academic reputation. And so the city, the population quadruples during the college season. The year when, during the year when all the kids are on campus. So it was a very liberal place. And we had a guy blow up the Army Mass Research Center in protest of the Vietnam War. And there were protests all the time going on there. It was a political hotbed. It was the Woodstock era, sex, drugs, rock and roll for everybody. And I just remembered, I never quite quantified my sexuality. I was dating girls because I was supposed to date girls. And then I just noticed there were some boys I thought were good looking too. And anybody, I'm sure my mother figured out when I had the Sean Cassidy poster on my bedroom wall and the Rod Stewart poster on my bedroom wall, and but I didn't. And then until I was playing around with some guy in the neighborhood, and right after we broke puberty, but I was reading Rolling Stone magazine, and they had an interview with David Bowie.
Oh, yeah.
And they asked him something about his sexuality. I don't remember what the question was. And he said, yeah, I'm bisexual. I like men and I like women. And I thought, wow, that's so cool. So I felt like instant acceptance, like, okay, I'm all right. David Bowie is one of the coolest, he might be the coolest person on earth to begin with. And if that works for him, that can work for me. So that was, and then, the other thing is I moved out of the house when I was 15, 16 years old and lived by my own. So I had a very active sexual history, and I was in a city where that was entirely possible. And I always looked older. I could grow a mustache like by the time I was 16, so I could get into any nightclub, dance hall, whatever. So I was dating people older than me. But then when I got in the professional work world, I was pretty guarded about it. So I would say I was dating someone, or I would talk about a person, but I would never say a man, or a man's name for, I don't know how many years. And then I just got to the point where I said, I don't know. And everybody knew I was never in the closet. Everybody knew from the time I was 14 or 13 or 15, whenever I read that David Bowie, that was it. I was in, and okay, I'm all in. And we didn't talk about it, because my family, we don't talk about things like that. Okay. In those days. Now I have a whole different relationship, because I've gone through therapy and I'm able to express things to my family, because they could express them back. But I mean, I would go to my sister's wedding and I would bring my friend who I lived with, but we would certainly never say he was my boyfriend, and we would never use terms like that. But so it was, everybody knew, but we just didn't talk about it. But with my friends, of course, I talked about it. And but I thought, well, in the corporate sense, I have these corporate consulting clients, and I just, at some point, I was like, nah, the hell with it. I'm just going to be me. And I've got to be me, or I'm going to be the thing. Because here's the thing people don't understand. When I see people getting shamed, like celebrities, they will talk about how they were ostracized and discriminated against for being gay. And equate it to being growing up Black in the South, or being a minority in UK, or a minority somewhere else. And they get ratioed, they get attacked. How dare you compare being discriminated against as a gay person with a Black person who was a slave in the United States, people who had to pick cotton. And I'm always, sorry, that don't work with me. That the prejudice and the fear and the ostracism and the dangers that you face being gay are just as equivalent as any of those other forms of discrimination. And there are some ways they're worse. Now, obviously, they're not worse than slavery. We're not going to touch that bar, right? But the thing with being Cuban in Miami in the 1980s, when everybody hated the Marielitos and the boat lift, and these were the cocaine cowboys, and all these Cubans were the dirty people from Castro's prison that are ruining Miami. Was all you had to do was go down to Calle Ocho, and you were in the middle of tens of thousands of Cubans, just like you, who loved you and accepted you for who you are. If you go to San Diego, there is the Little Korea area. There is the Little Italy area. If you grew up in Chicago, right, in a bad neighborhood, you were surrounded with other Black people who lived in your bad neighborhood. When you're gay, you don't have that, particularly in the, earlier. Now today, there's like enclaves, places you can go, right? Fort Lauderdale, South Beach was the gay mecca of the world.
Yeah.
Now Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale is a gay mecca. The forgot the name of the neighborhood in Paris where the gays and the Jews, the Marais district. So there's places like that, but not usually. And the thing people don't understand is when you have that support structure of, hey, you're the Chinese kid who lives in Little China, at least you have a sort of a support network. But if you're the gay kid and your mother and your father want to throw you out of the house because you're gay, when, why is Wilton Manors a gay mecca? Because people from all over the world escape here to avoid getting killed at home. There's a great Asian restaurant on Wilton Manors Drive, and got to, be friends with one of the waiters there. He's from Indonesia. And we were just talking about family, and he told me, I have to come here because if my brother knew I was gay, he would kill me. If my father knew I was gay, he would kill me. Yeah. And that's, for people who don't understand, that's not an expression. No, he means literally, they would kill him. Yeah. I remember, I think it was BuzzFeed. They did this whole expose when they went to the Olympics, and they took a Grindr app. And they wrote a whole story about the gay Olympians, and like from these places like Iran and Iraq and Saudi Arabia and whatever. And there's a swimmer for this country team, and he was on that. And I got on Twitter, and I had a pretty big following, and that's back in the day when you really got traction. So I did a thing. You guys should be ashamed of yourself. Do you understand? You're going to get people killed. Yeah. There are people that you're outing in this story that you think is so clever and trendy and funny, that when they go back to their country, they might go to prison for life, or they might be executed because they figure out, okay, this type of athlete from this country on this team, and they're going to, and I shouldn't say it's BuzzFeed, but I think it was BuzzFeed, but whatever it was one of those, the Daily Beast or BuzzFeed or one of those kind of things. Yeah. And I got so many thousands of retweets, it shamed them, and they took that article down. Good. And they apologized and realized, no, this gets people killed.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I'd never thought about it in terms of equating it to other forms of prejudice. But as you say, with sexuality, and I'm not trying to one-upman, and my problem's bigger than someone else's. But with sexuality, as you say, you are, for a time, you can't tell your family, you can't tell your friends, you can't let your neighbors know, you can't be yourself in a restaurant in case someone sees you, you can't be yourself in a pub in case, everywhere. And, I was like that for my first year or two in my company, because everybody was, I was 20 years old. Everyone was 45 and older, so they were, they were growing up in a different generation with different views and stuff. And I was like, oh, I can't let anybody know. And I can't really remember where this whole point started, but I think it probably helps people to understand, as you said earlier, when you're speaking on the platform, that everybody has some screwed up stuff in their past and their current life and all that stuff. We're all like one of those, what is it, like where people sew a lovely, beautiful rose on a cushion or something, but you turn it the other way around and it's horrible. Everything's all over the place,
Right. The
embroidery, yeah. And we all have that, and yet we can all still succeed, providing we don't let that beat us.
Yeah, that's the beauty of our profession. Is it is one of the last true, authentic, pure metrocity. How do I say that? Meritocracy.
Yes.
It's a true meritocracy.
Absolutely.
The bonus plan doesn't care about your age, your sexuality, your ethnicity, your whatever. It's like if you meet that criteria, you're going to get that pin, you're going to get that recognition, and you're going to get that bonus check.
Yeah.
And that's just not true in so many other areas of business.
Yeah.
That's just one of the meritocracy is, because what is Amway stands for the American way. It was, a shortened version of that. And they were one of the pioneers, of course, in the space. And the United States was, to its credit, the birth child of network marketing. And I think it had to happen at some place like here, because we are a republic. We are one of and yes, it's not pure free enterprise. It's not pure capitalism. I get that. There's no debate about that. But America is one of the greatest countries on earth to embrace free enterprise and the ability, to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Yeah.
And yes, we face challenges, and yes, we have political divides or whatever, but free enterprise is what drove America to be an exceptional country. And that's what drove America to be the birthplace of network marketing. And network marketing is the epitome, is the shining example of free enterprise that works. And that's why it was so incredible when I took network marketing to Croatia and Slovenia and Bulgaria, who had been under Tito and Yugoslavia for decades. Yeah. And, why we see it, and see it happening in these countries around the world as they develop and move towards freedom. That's one of the amazing things about our profession.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Bulgaria, as you know, I've done a lot of work there. I've probably spoken 50 times there, maybe more now. And they, at the next mastermind event in Turkey, they will have 150, 200 people there. They'll have 10% of the room, just like they had.
They're going to have more, because I have a company I'm working with in Bulgaria. And for sure, they will be sending a contingent. So we're going to have a big Bulgarian crowd.
Wow. Well, I'm talking about the one company that I know of. So couple it with that. But, that's incredible when you think what they've lived through, especially a lot of the people who are now doing really well, that they lived through those eras. And the same with Iran. We'll have people from Iran come in there, including women.
Yes.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah. I did as you know, I'm huge in Iran because my 2 books in Farsi did amazing there. And so I did like a 6-week leadership training, high-level training, very high price thing. We limited it to 25 people maximum, first come, first serve. And there was one woman in that group, you know, who was wearing a burqa on the Zoom calls even. And that's changing. And what's happening now in Iran is extraordinary. It's very dangerous right now. I'm very sad for what's happening with the government. And I have so many dear friends there. I hope that our business can be one of those catalysts that help bring freedom to that country, because the people are amazing, beautiful people.
Yeah, totally agree. And my books have also been translated there, but haven't done as well as yours. One of my favorite things to do around the world is if my book's been translated and so has yours, and I do an event, and on the back, the desk at the back where they're selling the books, and I've probably done this to you like 5 times now, is put a pile of my books, but only one left, next to a big pile of yours, and say, "Hey, look, I've all sold out." But the truth is,
yes, you do that frequently.
I've just hidden them under the table. That's it.
This seems like a good time to kind of wind things down. Yeah. What, any final thoughts that you have or want to share? About?
I mean, this is amazing. Like this is, we really have chopped it up. I mean, it's nearly 3 hours, and I hope people, maybe not in one burst, but will listen to this and take value from it to realize that, you know, that they can have that lifestyle of choice, and that characters like you and I and many others from all different types of backgrounds, all different starts, all different journeys can still succeed. And that, I think, is one of the greatest privileges and honors when you actually hang around with and see people from so many different backgrounds who are doing well, who can all cohabit and get on and find common ground where in the normal world they would never have found it. And I hope that people will have picked out some of the lessons that I picked out from you 24 years ago, whenever it was, in that hotel in Heathrow, with 300 other Brits or however many it was, I can't remember, and can apply it to their business, and know that if they just do that consistently enough and don't let people knock them off course, have resilience, they can have their lifestyle of choice as well.
Hey, thank you so much for doing this. I love what we chopped up here. And it couldn't have happened without your insight, wisdom, and just passion. So thank you, my friend.
What an honor. Great to be with you. Thank you very much.
Everybody watching, hit the subscribe button, get down in the comments, let us know what you think, and we will see you on the next time around. Peace.